But one thing that experts across the political spectrum agree on is that health care in America often costs too much.
Why is healthcare in the United States so expensive in the first place? The United States spends a staggering $3.2 trillion a year on healthcare. We spend more money on healthcare than any other country in the world.
I want to talk today about why healthcare costs in the United States are so phenomenally, fascinatingly expensive, but first I have to blow your mind.
One of the most common hits on the United States is that it has the worst ROI when it comes to healthcare expenditures. We spend the most money on healthcare, yet have one of the worst health outcomes. The latest poll done in 2019 ranked all the country's overall health. This poll has America ranked as 35th in the world. Cuba is ranked 30th. As a proud American, this is embarrassing. The answer to solving the problem of America's poor healthcare investment is obviously multifaceted. Is it our fault? Because we're one of the most obese nations in the world? Is it the growing population of the elderly who need more expensive treatments? Is it the fault of the pharmaceutical companies that charge too much for their medications? Can we blame insurance companies for artificially inflating the cost of care in order to pad their bottom line? Is it due to America, though only being 5% of the world's population, consume approximately 2/3 of the world's prescription drugs? Maybe. Well, yeah, of course all that plays a role, but I still believe that all of those things are symptoms of a much deeper problem. And the result of those symptoms is increased spending. Like getting a stomachache because you ate a whole bag of candy. You could say that the cause of the stomachache would be the candy, and the symptom would just be the stomachache. But I think the stomachache is the result of the symptom of overeating the candy, and the cause of the overeating would be the lack of self-control. So even though the US may have the worst symptoms, and therefore the highest expenditures, every nation is suffering from the same symptoms, even though they may vary in degree. Obesity, higher life expectancies, tagged along with decreases in quality of life, and other healthcare costs such as drugs or insurance are still costs that need to be counted for and are still weighing heavy on the pockets of every nation's government. That's why the title of this video says world and not just one particular country. If every nation addressed the cause and quit blaming the candy for their stomach aches, worldwide health expenditures would plummet. So what is this cause? Now, I know. Who am I anyway? How could I have the answer that could save the world billions, if not trillions, of dollars? I get it. But I consulted with the most powerful individual I know, and he agreed with my hypothesis. So this is how I laid it out for him. Can we agree that the implementation of healthcare can either be proactive or reactive? Can we agree that the majority of our spending is in the reactive form? Of course, it makes sense that if the population focused more on proactive healthcare, like eating less junk food and exercising, that we would be better off. But I still don't think that that addresses the root of the issue. I believe that it's much deeper and more nuanced. So hear me out. We've all been sick before, right? Let's say we get a cold or a bellyache. What are our options? We could call the ambulance and be rushed to the ER. We could do absolutely nothing and just let it play out. Or anything in between. But what is the driving force behind why we choose one option over the other? Symptom severity, right? If you were having a stomach ache, but the pain is so bad, it feels like your insides are about to burst out of your abdomen all alien style, then going to the ER is obviously the wisest solution. If it's really not that bad, and you just feel a little queasy, then drinking the pink juice should do the trick. But my question is, how small or insignificant do the symptoms have to be before we quit outsourcing trust our body's ability to take care of the problem? And here is where I believe the first problem lies. The first reason the world spends too much money on healthcare is because the world has lost faith in our body's intelligence. And ironically, the more this faith is forgotten, the less credible it becomes. What do I mean by that? The more our faith to overcome that which ails us is misplaced and put onto outside sources that are strictly purposed to suppress the symptoms of the ailment, the weaker we get and the more dependent we become. And the more we do this, the more we turn into people who no longer seek symptom suppression for comfort's sake, but for survival's sake. Here's an example, because I think I lost you. Rex is a young and healthy golden retriever puppy. One day, Rex's owner noticed that he was a little less playful and didn't want to eat his food. Rex's owner kneels down beside him and rubs his belly to find out that Rex is a little bloated, and he's dealing with a bit of a tummy ache. Maybe he got into something outside, or maybe he ate some of Johnny's goldfish that he dropped from the table last night. Now, Rex's owner has a big decision to make. Does he just let Rex ride this little tummy ache out and put his faith in Rex's body's ability to heal? Or does he step in and give him some medication to make his bloated belly feel better? What should he do? Rex's owner, Alan, decides that he wants Rex's belly to feel better right away. So he gives him some medication. And shortly after, Rex is back to his vibrant self again. He's playing and jumping like nothing was ever wrong. Unfortunately, what Alan and Rex are unaware of is that that medication that made Rex feel better did just a little bit of damage to his liver. It also killed some of his good microbiome in his gut, and it exposed him to just a little bit of heavy metals. Granted, done only once, this doesn't pose much of a threat to Rex's overall health. But what about the next time Rex has an upset stomach? Well, Alan would logically see that the medication worked so well the first time that there's no reason why he shouldn't just use it again. And again, Rex's liver gets a little bit more strained. His microbiome gets weaker, and Rex gets exposed to just a little bit more heavy metals. Do you think that this is making Rex stronger or weaker? Is Rex more capable or less capable of dealing with his next ailment on his own? So let's fast forward 10 years, or 70 dog years. Whenever Rex has gotten hurt or any sort of ailment, Alan provided him with symptom-suppressing medication. Now Rex has to eat special dog food because they had to remove his gallbladder 20 dog years ago. Rex is also on a couple different daily medications to keep his heart beating in proper rhythm, his blood sugar in control, and to help him with his chronic diarrhea. Rex also has arthritis in all 4 of his hip joints and is starting to grow apathetic to his life in general. Now let me ask you another question. At this point in Rex's life, does Alan have the opportunity to strip Rex from all his symptom-suppressing medication and solely rely on Rex's created body to heal him of all his ailments? What do you think would happen if Alan didn't give Rex his medications? Well, Rex would quickly die. Alan and Rex can no longer put their faith in Rex's body's ability to heal. And this stems from what I said earlier. The more this faith is forgotten, the less credible it becomes. Let's rewind all the way back when Rex was a puppy with his first goldfish-induced bellyache. I said that the first problem was that Alan lost faith in Rex's intelligently created body. But I believe not only did Alan lose his faith in Rex's ability to heal, he partially ignored the law of consequence. Now, why do I say partially? Well, because Alan thoroughly thought out the consequences of not giving Rex the medication. He knew that it would increase the time he had to deal with his bellyache, and Alan didn't want to see him suffer any longer. But every decision has a consequence. Unfortunately, Alan did not think to apply this same thinking when it came to the medication's consequences. And I believe Alan is not the only one who does this. Maybe it's because Alan just isn't aware that medications can have meaningful consequences. Or maybe it's because he's been conditioned to think that way, because pharmaceutical companies spend $30 billion in advertising every year. Regardless, the problem remains. If Alan would have seen Rex sitting there with his first little goldfish-induced bloated belly and thought to himself, Rex was created with a high-functioning and intelligent body, and I should just let him try to work this out himself. Instead of trying to step in and artificially suppress the symptoms with medications that have meaningful consequences to Rex's overall health, I should place my faith not in medications or symptom suppression treatment, but in Rex's ability to grow, adapt, and heal. Then Rex would have gotten over that little tummy ache and would not have been overall weakened by it or the medications. And the next time Rex was faced with an ailment, Rex would be better equipped to handle it. Also, a precedent would have been set in this household that when things go wrong, we follow ECRET, as conservative as reasonably possible. So, wouldn't you agree that the first iteration of the story of Rex and Alan, where Rex was left dependent on his medications for survival, would have Alan spending much more money on healthcare-related things than the second story? Of course, this is an impossible experiment to effectively run, but logically, the more Alan's faith was placed in medications, and the less it was placed in Rex's intelligent body, the weaker Rex became, the more dependent Rex became, and the more these medications, treatments, and special dog foods became mandatory. Therefore, the more money was spent. So let's extrapolate these logical findings. Is Alan the only one in the world who thinks this way? I believe that Alan's thought process in the first iteration of the story is the same thought process of that of the majority of the population. So wouldn't you agree that Alan could have not only helped with Rex's overall health, but saved a lot of money on healthcare expenditures in the process by growing in his faith in our body's ability to heal? And if Alan could do that, then couldn't the world do that as well? How much healthier would the world be if they properly understood the meaningful consequences of symptom-suppressing treatments and placed their faith not in medications, but in their own body's ability to heal? And consequently, how much money would they save if they decreased their chances of becoming dependent on these symptom-suppressing treatments for survival? Now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that if you're having a heart attack, that you should just lie there on the floor with your fingers crossed while you clasp your chest. ACARP means that you still need to be reasonable. Symptom suppression can save lives, but relying on symptom suppression just for comfort's sake will eventually leave you dependent on symptom suppression for survival's sake, which is very costly. So how does the world spend less on healthcare? Easy. By accurately understanding the meaningful consequences of symptom suppression and by growing in their faith in their created body's ability to grow, heal, and adapt. So what do you think?